St. Matthew, the 17th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah, talking with them. Then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased to listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Get up and do not be afraid. And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the road, Jesus ordered them, Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. So I realized there's been a while since I talked about a certain subject or something in my own life. And it's something that most of you have heard about, but it's one that I decided I would talk about today a little bit, and that is Montana. I know, I hardly ever talk about going to Montana and fishing and hiking and things like that, but today I thought I would talk. Actually, I want to talk about our cabin in Montana, my family cabin where we would go and just outside of Dillon, Montana, and go up to the cabin. Actually, I want to talk about something that's behind our cabin, and that is what we call the climbing rocks. They're great. They are fantastic. That's the climbing rocks out there, and they are terrifying. They are. They're right there. It's hard to see. That's Colleen, who's climbing the climbing rocks. And you climb up, and it's treacherous, but it's fun. There's climbing rocks, and you get up to the top. That's Joey a few years ago. Very contemplative, pondering the scene outside, and this is a long time ago because you've got little kids. There's Peter and Mariah, and we've got my nephew and cousins, and there's my dad. And we've made it to the top of the climbing rocks, and you can look out. Third, you look out and see magnificent. So the gospel lesson is Transfiguration Sunday. They climbed to the top of the mountain, and Jesus has been climbing a lot of mountains with disciples. He went up on the mountain, and they sat, and he does the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, and he's been up there. This one here, this climb up into the mountain, and the Transfiguration is right after his baptism. He climbs up, and he's there. He's up. He hears the voice. They see Moses and Elijah, and then they head down the other side. And he's heading down the other side to the cross. So this is the Transfiguration, but this is also the point where he gets up to the top, and then when he heads down and he turns his face towards Jerusalem, and he's heading towards the cross. So he's up on this mountain. Now, we like to talk about mountaintop experiences. We talk about those times where we experience God in the thin places. Now, the thin place is an Irish term that means when heaven and earth are close enough together that you can see God, that you can reach out and almost touch God. We have places in our lives that are considered thin places. This is one of the places for me, and it's just not because of the lack of oxygen. But this is one of the places when you look. Holden Village is a place for me, a thin place where I'm there and I can experience God. This sanctuary on Tuesday morning when it's empty, and I can come in and I can sit and I can take in and I can remember my baptism. This place becomes a thin place. doesn't have to just be geographically high. But there are places that we experience God. And those are beautiful places. They're places that we just take in. Yes. But there's times that we can get so focused on the thin places. That those are the places that we experience God. That we forget about the thick places. We forget about the places where we suffer, where we have pain, where our hearts are rendered and our hearts are torn. And we wonder and we say, God, where are you? We can wonder and we can go, Christ, are you present in this place? The thin place I can see and I can experience God and I go, oh, this is great, but what about the thick places? What about those places? What about the times where I'm climbing, the times where the shale seems to be falling around me, the times that just my heart is struggling? On the Transfiguration, on that mountaintop, Jesus is there. And the disciples are there. And they want to hold on to this time. I love it. Peter's like, let me build you. We're going to build 3 houses, one for Moses and Elijah and you. One of the gospel lessons says, he says that because he doesn't know what to say. I just love that. Because Peter will just speak. He doesn't know how to handle this, so he's just speaking. But we know that experience. We go, oh. But on the other sides of the climb, on the climb up as they're struggling on, and then the climb down on the other side, we can go, okay, God, where are you? I need to know that you're here with me. Because I know all of the places where I can experience you in the thin. But I want to know, are you with me when life is thick? When life is mucky? When life is like the swamp as we're trying to climb through it? And so we there, and we have this view that we can see. You know, the climbing rocks for me is absolutely terrifying. It's scary. I'm scared of heights. I know I've told you this before. I'm scared of heights. Terrified of heights. And yet I've climbed these rocks. I've gotten to the top and I've looked out. I've seen all of this. But there's a reason that I've been able to climb these rocks, and that's because of this guy right here. That's my dad. The fact that my dad goes along with me as I climb these rocks, it is the only reason why I would let these 2 little ones, or Colleen and Joey, why I would let them climb the rocks as well. If it was just me climbing the rocks with my kids, no. I don't trust myself enough. I don't trust my foothold. I don't trust my experience, but I trust this man right here. Because I do. Because I have experience with him on the high places, but I also have experience with him in the thick places. I have the experience that when life gets rough, when I needed to move out of the place and my dad said, if you need a U-Haul, I'll have one there tomorrow. When life just crumbles around, he was the one that would stand and be there. That's why I allowed my kids to climb up, which I still wonder, is that a good parenting decision? But it's because I trust him. So when they're on top of this mountain, and this cloud overshadows the disciples, and there's a voice, and we hear the voice say, "This is my son, the beloved, with him I am well pleased. Listen to him." That's the same voice that Jesus heard at the waters of baptism in the river Jordan. When the waters poured back out over his head, he dunked and brought back up. It's the same voice that claims us in these waters as the water is poured over our head. And God says, you are my child beloved. It's because of that voice. It's because of the God that claims you and me that when we experience God in the thin, we know that we can experience, and we do experience God in the moments of thick. We have this theology that we call the theology of the cross that tells us that God knows what we are going through because of the cross, what Christ went through when he was crucified and when he was laid in the tomb. The theology of the cross is that God sits with us in the ash. That God sits with us in our pain as well as the joy. It's why we believe that Christ holds us close even when we can't feel it. Because that's the beauty of our faith, is that it's not about our feelings. If it was about our feelings, I would be in trouble. I tell my kids, I love you always, and there is some days that I wonder, do I feel that? I know it. And the days that I have to send my kids to the room because I don't trust myself, I really am thankful that I know of my love. And that tomorrow I will feel that love again. But because of something they've done, I wonder. It's called being a parent. But we have a God that loves you no matter what. We have a God that has claimed you in the waters of baptism. We have a God who gives you bread and wine, body and blood, because of who God is and who God claims you to be. A God that meets you in the thin places, in the thick places, and a God that walks with you in the rough and the rocky places, that doesn't leave you alone, that will continue to walk with you the entire way. Whether we know it or not, whether we feel it or not, God is with us, and that's the promise on this side, that side, and the high place. Thanks be to God. Amen. We're going to sing our sermon hymn, which is one